Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the country. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the country you're in. I know that some of you have already joined us. We're going to be starting this broadcast in about 2 minutes. And if you are here for the WIE webinar, the Self-Esteem and Self-Confidence game, you are in the right place. Stay tuned. We will be beginning again in about 2 minutes. I am Dr. Miriam Reiss, and I am your host for this conference, for this webinar. Welcome all of you who have joined us today for this call. I'm Dr. Miriam Reiss, and I'm here to welcome you to the WIE webinar, the Self-Esteem and Self-Confidence game, tips, key tools for women in engineering. It's great to have you on board with us. Some of you will be listening to us live today. Some of you will be listening to this recording. Either way, I welcome you. I'm Dr. Miriam Reiss, and I'm an executive coach based in Los Angeles who works with women in engineering, the sciences, and technology. My training is a blend of professional coaching, psychology, consciousness, health, healing, many different things. At the end of this webinar, I'm going to be making a special offer for those of you listening in, so please stick around to the end of the call. It will be worth your while. So we have some intentions for today, and my intentions for you are, first of all, to learn, to listen and to learn about the self-esteem and self-confidence game. My second intention for you is to stop tolerating. As you learn, there may be some things that come to your awareness, things that you have been tolerating in your life, and this is an opportunity, an invitation to stop tolerating. And then hopefully, as we move forward, you'll be able to take your first step in this process. This is often an awakening for women. I'm in the process of writing a book on self-esteem, so this is very rich material, and there's a lot here for you if you'd like to take advantage of it. So I really invite you to free yourself up during this hour that we're together, and to really make yourself available for what's present for you. Whatever part of the world you're living in, this is an issue that is really a global issue. It's not a local issue, and it is something, in some societies it's more strong, in some cultures there are nuances, different variables to it. In every country, this is an issue. I've worked with women all over the world as an executive coach, and I come across this again and again. So again, welcome to the call. The first thing I'd like to do is to make a distinction for you between self-esteem and self-confidence. At least in many parts of the world, we use those terms interchangeably. We talk about self-esteem or self-worth and self-confidence as though they're the same thing. And they're not. They're really quite different from each other. So when I talk about self-esteem, I'm talking about the feeling that you have for yourself in your relationship with yourself, when you're alone, when nobody's watching, when you go home at night, when you're alone in your office, when you're with yourself in your relationship with yourself. When I talk about self-confidence, I'm talking about what you exhibit to the world, what you demonstrate to the world, how you show up in the world. And so your self-confidence is the outer manifestation. Now you might rationally think, well, if someone has self-confidence, that they have self-esteem. And that's actually not true at all. Very often people will demonstrate, in particular women, will demonstrate self-confidence, and self-esteem will be missing. And what happens when there's self-confidence is self-confidence is a show of outer activity. It's a presentation, and it's an image, and it's actually a false image. The self-esteem is not really there. Often we have had examples in the United States where people who are well known and in the public eye, who have been demonstrating, at least to the outer, on the outer level, they've been demonstrating self-confidence, and then we find out that they commit suicide, or they do things in their family, terrible things to their spouse, to their children, to other people in their life. And we realize that what they've been doing demonstrates that they do not have self-esteem. So what happens is that their private relationship with themselves, which is what self-esteem is all about, is really lacking. So what happens is that it's easy to pretend that we have self-confidence, particularly on the job. But there are many telltale signs when it's simply a show. And you know for yourself if self-esteem is not there. So I invite you to ask yourself the question right here, right now, how are you showing up? So as a coach, there are many things that show up when I'm working with new clients. Let me give you some examples. Sometimes new clients will be workaholic. Are you a workaholic? That is actually a very clear demonstration of low self-esteem, because it says that you are valuing yourself only in terms of your most recent accomplishment and in terms of what you do. So your workaholism is a demonstration that you believe that people are judging you only by what you produce, and unless you keep on working, you have no value as a human being, that your value is entirely in what you demonstrate in your work. How are you? Number 2, how are you with compliments? How are you with praise? The other day I complimented a woman on a suit that she was wearing, and she said, this is a really old suit. This suit must be 10 years old. What was she doing when she said that? Was she saying, thank you, I appreciate it, I really love this suit, or I like this suit, I've been wearing it for many years because I really enjoy it? No, she was dismissing my compliment. She was diminishing it. And by diminishing my compliment, she was also diminishing me. When you diminish a compliment, you diminish the person who's giving you the compliment. So when someone gives you a compliment, when they praise you, when they say you really did a great job, do you say, it was easy, or no big deal? Or do you somehow dismiss that compliment? Do you somehow dismiss the praise? That's very blatant evidence of low self-esteem. A third sign of low self-esteem is perfectionism. When someone keeps on working to make something perfect, the indication that we want something to be perfect, perfectionism is the wrong goal. You want to be focused on progress, not perfectionism. When we're focused on perfectionism, it's an indicator that we're afraid that some part of us that is less than, that is not so good, is going to show up. And we don't want anything to show up that might be less than perfect. That's an indicator of low self-esteem. Number 4, if you are a pleaser, that is, if you give people things because you want them to like you, if you do things because you want people to like you, that's an indicator of low self-esteem, as in you are only as valuable as the things that you do for people, as the ways that you show up. So if you're busy pleasing, that's a very large indicator of low self-esteem, that you only have value in terms of what you do for people and the degree to which people like you, and you have to keep doing things for people because otherwise, well, they may not like you. Number 5, do you chronically compare yourself with other people? Are you jealous of other people? What do you tell yourself about other people? I know someone who's constantly telling herself that other women, other people are better looking than she is, do things better, have this, have that. If they do well, she minimizes them and she says, well, they have this going on and they have that going on, and they came into a wealthy family, or they had a jump start in life because of this thing or that thing. So they're chronically always comparing themselves to other people. That's another sign of chronic low self-esteem. Are you critical of yourself? Are you continually criticizing who you are and what you do, that nothing you do is ever good enough? It's another sign of low self-esteem. Do you feel somehow that you're unworthy, that you're undeserving? When good things happen to you, do you minimize them? I have a client that I just began working with who constantly tells herself that she's not worthy of things. And when we have coaching sessions, in our first few sessions, she always started with the bad news, and I had to squeeze the good news out of her because she didn't feel worthy of the good things that were happening, and she would minimize good things. Do you have a temper? Do you get angry easily? That's another sign. Having a temper is another sign of low self-esteem, because it's an indicator that your relationship with yourself is not a good one. So what's happening is that you're being triggered on the outside by what's really going on inside you. Do you tend to obsess over mistakes? When you do something that's a mistake or something that you think is wrong, do you constantly think about it? Do you go round and round about it? A day or two later, are you still thinking about it? Maybe even a week or a month later, are you still thinking about it? People who have low self-esteem obsess over what they might do wrong, what they might be doing wrong, or what they did wrong. Another sign of low self-esteem is having trouble saying no. Do you find that somebody asks you for something and you rationalize, well, I really should be doing something or this thing for this person because, well, they're a good friend, or they're my boss, or they're my coworker, and I want them to like me, and I don't feel like saying no. I shouldn't say no, so I'll say yes. And then you find yourself being greatly inconvenienced by the fact that you didn't say no, and you're overcommitted because you keep saying yes to people, and so you don't have time for yourself. You don't have time for your own life. Maybe you have trouble saying no to your family or to your children or to your spouse. Maybe you have trouble saying no to friends. Maybe you have trouble saying no in your personal life. Or maybe you have trouble saying no on the job where you're afraid you're going to get fired if you don't keep saying yes to things. Do you tend, if you find that you're not able to make an agreement, or let's say someone invites you out and you have to say no, do you find yourself giving them lots of reasons? Well, I really can't. I'd love to come, but I can't make it because I have this commitment and I wish I could make it. And do you over-justify the reasons why you can't come or why you can't do this thing that they want you to do? Do you find yourself, in essence, not just saying no, but begging out of it? Those are other signs of low self-esteem. Finally, do you not speak up on your own behalf? Do you think to yourself later, oh, I wish I had said this thing, or I wish I had said that thing? After the meeting, after the thing has passed, you're beating yourself up and saying, I wish that I had spoken up. So again, the signs of low self-esteem are being a workaholic, not being able to receive compliments or praise, perfectionism, being a pleaser, chronically comparing yourself to other people, being critical of yourself or others, feeling unworthy or undeserving, having a temper, obsessing over mistakes or potential mistakes or things that feel like mistakes to you, having trouble saying no, pleading for or over-justifying needs, not speaking up on your own behalf. So as I've been going over these things, do you find yourself dealing with one of these behaviors? And please use the chat box to let us know what's going on. I'm actively watching that chat box. I want to know what you feel. I want to know what you think. Please put your comments in, because I'm going to be using this time to really answer and work with you and work with your questions and to coach you. So are you dealing with one of these behaviors? Have you been dealing with more than one of these behaviors? I find that particularly with women in engineering, that there is a missing skill set around these things, as in, how do I do that? How do I speak up for myself? How do I stop being a workaholic? How do I better receive compliments and praise? How do I stop being a perfectionist? How do I stop pleasing? Is that so for you? Let us know. Let me know what's going on in your life. Do you have a situation at work that you'd like some coaching on? Do you have a situation in your life that you'd like some coaching on? This would be a time to indicate that and to indicate what's going on for you, because this is really key. This is really something that we want to know. This is the time to ask for help. So if you are, for example, a workaholic, you might ask yourself, when did this start? When did I decide that my work as it is wasn't good enough and I needed to overcompensate for my work or for myself? When did I start doing that? Was it with a particularly tough boss? Was it with a tough work situation? Or is that something I've been doing all my life? Was I always the one at school who was over-prepared? Was I always the one that needed to do more than needed just so I could cover my bases and to be sure that I wasn't going to fail? I used to go to school with some girls, and that in the morning, whenever we had an exam, they would always be saying, I'm going to fail the exam. I'm going to fail this test. And initially I was very worried about them, and I thought, oh my goodness, they're going to fail the test. And they would say, I didn't study at all. And then they would wind up getting high marks on the test, on the exam. And I realized that they were saying that they didn't study when in fact they did, because they were nervous and they were overcompensating. They had studied like crazy for the exam. And when they said, oh, I'm going to fail, that was really a misnomer. In fact, they did extremely well. And this was how they back themselves up for the exam. Okay, so we're starting to get some questions in, so let's talk about some of those questions. Can high self-esteem seem conceited or egotistical? No. What you might be talking about is bragging. Bragging is a different thing. When you have high self-esteem, you feel good about yourself, you feel capable, and you feel inside like you are willing and able to do the job. It is not conceited, it is not egotistical, it is not narcissistic at all. When you show up as high self-esteem in an organization, you actually show up, believe it or not, as normal. High self-esteem is actually normal. So it's when you're showing up with low self-esteem that it shows up as not normal. That's when people's attention gets called to you. So high self-esteem actually shows up in organizations as normal, as business as usual. It's not conceited, it's not egotistical, it's not narcissistic, it's not being overfull of yourself. It shows up as you valuing yourself, and as you value yourself, other people will value you. So there is a reflective mirror that's present whenever you demonstrate high self-esteem or low self-esteem. So in fact, people will mirror back to you how you show up. So if you don't get the raise that you wanted, you're not showing up in high self-esteem. Now the boss may say, well, we couldn't afford it, we have budget concerns. That is probably semi-true. You may find that other people get those raises and you might be jealous and say, well, how come they got it and I didn't? Well, you might not be showing up in a way that reflects high self-esteem in how you're doing the job and how you're showing up to them as a human being. Self-esteem is about how you hold yourself as a human being. Someone asked the question, what thoughts do you have about the differences between the way men and women view self-esteem? Men and women view self-esteem very differently. In my experience, men on the job often act confident whether or not they feel it. Women do not feel secure acting confident if they don't feel it. And men will often say they can do something whether or not they can do it as a sign of confidence. A woman will say, well, let me try, or I'll see how I do. Women often reflect low self-esteem, even if they feel the same way that men do. It's very, very interesting. This is why I love coaching women, because women do not have that bravado going about self-esteem, and they're willing to say, I need to work on this. They're not trying to conceal it. They really want it to work. So men and women show up very, very differently, and women need to learn how to hold themselves in a more valued way. Question, what thoughts do you have about how self-esteem helps you meet the challenges of life? Self-esteem is everything. That's why I'm writing a book about it. If you don't have self-esteem, you're not meeting the challenges of life. You're circumventing the challenges of life. When you don't have self-esteem, you will try to block or avoid or to talk yourself out of or minimize or diminish the challenges of life. You will handle life in a way that takes you down if you have low self-esteem. Low self-esteem takes people down so that they're unable to meet the challenges of life. It cripples people, it paralyzes people, particularly women. Someone's asking, these are great questions by the way, what blocks or gets in the way of you having better self-esteem? Well, there's what happened in your past, and then there's what happens in your present. People often have a situation where their self-esteem is tarnished in childhood. And when it's tarnished in childhood, that can really interfere. Now, there's difference between tarnished and broken. So if your self-esteem was tarnished, then you might just want to, then if somebody says, well, just brush it off, you're able to do that. If your self-esteem is shattered, if it's in shards, if it's broken, then what's going to happen is that you will find it very, very hard to bring back your self-esteem, and that's when coaching is invaluable. I work with people whose self-esteem is not just tarnished, but really where something was done in childhood. It could have been mental illness, abuse, tremendous constant criticism, incest, belittling, alcoholism in the family. All those things don't just tarnish self-esteem, they shatter self-esteem. So depending on where your self-esteem is, if it's just tarnished, then you can shine it back up again. If it's more than tarnished, that's really a deep life issue, and that's not something that you can fix on your own. Don't try fixing self-esteem if it's more than tarnished. Someone asked, what blocks or gets in the way of you having better self-esteem? What blocks or gets in the way really is how you hold yourself and what you say when you talk to yourself. We have an inner critic, and that inner critic, if we have low self-esteem, is merciless. And that inner critic will say over and over and over again all the things that we're doing wrong. And one of the things that I do as a coach is I work with you and your inner critic, because your inner critic and you are in a boxing ring together, and that doesn't stop. So it becomes seriously important to not try to do this on your own at this point in your career, but to really hire professional help. Someone asked, what advice would you give to someone who wanted to develop their self-esteem? I would say, first and foremost, begin committing to yourself. Begin holding inside that you're worth it. When you have low self-esteem, that says that you are holding inside that you are undeserving of love, undeserving of praise, undeserving of compliments, undeserving of good things. So the first thing to do is to begin committing to yourself and hold inside that you're worth it. Now the thing about it is that the mind is a very tricky thing. And the mind will often debate with us and tell us that we're not worth it and say, oh, but you did this wrong and you did that wrong. And the mind will belittle us. So what we start doing in coaching is a process of what I call repatterning, where we actually repattern the mind. And it's a process. It takes some time, and it is so worth it. Once we start repatterning, then you're able to catch yourself in the process, and often not at the end of the process, but before the process begins, before you begin beating yourself up, so that you can catch yourself and you stop doing it. And we begin replacing that with an entirely different model, an entirely different way of looking at yourself. So you've been holding yourself a certain way in your life. And when you get up in the morning, you keep holding yourself that way. And the mind chatters. It says all these things about you, and you can choose whether or not to believe them. And by the end of the day, if you have an inner critic, you will be worn out by that inner critic. So we really get to work with your inner critic and the things that you're saying to yourself. Someone asked the question, how can I feel more confident when talking to colleagues? So again, confidence and self-esteem are different. Confidence has to do with your level of competence. And if you are questioning your level of competence, you will not feel confident. So when I'm coaching the women that I work with in engineering and sciences and technology, we work not only on your self-esteem, but also on your confidence. So How you feel more confident has entirely to do with your achievements and your accomplishments, and ultimately your self-esteem, how you hold yourself. So if you're not feeling confident, chances are your inner critic is having a field day and telling you things about yourself that are undermining or diminishing you, and are making you feel less than confident, less than competent with your colleagues. Chances are you're comparing yourself to other people. Chances are you're not winning. You're feeling down, you're feeling out, you're feeling low. So how to feel more confident, there's not a one-step answer to that. It's really a process. And it's a process of working with yourself and gaining some tools. And these are tools that no one taught you when you were in engineering school. No one taught you in college. No one taught you. And chances are your family didn't teach you that either. So what happens is that the process of how you feel confident and competent is something that you need to learn. Just like you learned the skill of engineering, that's something that I teach you as a coach. It's the majority of the work that I do with the women that I work with. Somebody asked the question, is working hard to excel synonymous to having low self-esteem? They're actually two separate things. There's a difference between working hard to excel versus being a workaholic. Being a workaholic is different. Being a workaholic means you're not able to turn it off. You're not able to say, okay, this is when I stop working, this is when I play. So people who work hard to excel know how to turn it off. They know how to turn that switch off. They know how to be with their family. They know how to be with their friends. They know how to play. That's working hard to excel. Workaholic is when you are so bent on working that you're really unable to do anything else. You go on vacation, you take work with you. You go home, you take work with you. You're there early in the morning. You're working late at night. And if you tell people, I'm busy, they'll say, oh, that's great, because in our society and cultures around the world, if you say you're working hard, people will say, oh, that's great. It's an acknowledged, we don't see it as being the addiction, we don't see workaholism as being the addiction that it is. Men and women lose spouses and relationships and marriages and all kinds of things over workaholism. Workaholism is a killer to relationships. Someone asked, should saying no be as simple as that? No justifications with that. And my answer to that is, it depends. Sometimes how you hold it inside you is, yes, it's as simple as that. So somebody says to me, last night I was at dinner with a group of friends, and we have an election, as you probably know, going on in this country. It's a long-term process. The actual election is going to happen in November, this coming November. But there is an enormous amount of debate right now going on in this country amongst the people, about the people who are running for office. And there was a woman sitting in our midst who had a particular candidate that she was favoring. And she was talking about this candidate, and she was saying, well, this candidate, we should elect this candidate because this candidate has had such a difficult time because she's a woman. And this candidate has had a harder time, and she's had a harder time than the men who are running for office, and she's really had tremendous opposition. And so this particular friend of ours was going on and on and on and on about this candidate, and we said, we understand where you're coming from, and some of us agree, some of us disagree, and we've heard what you're talking about. Could you please stop? And this person just went on and on and on and on and wouldn't stop. And we were saying, stop, which is a clear way of saying no, and she wasn't hearing us. And so ultimately what we did, we were having dinner, was we got up and we took our plates and we left the table. We took our plates to clear our plates. We left the table. That's what we had to do for this woman to stop talking, because she just kept on going and nothing we said would get her to stop. So saying no, depending on who you're talking to, you may need to do different things in order to get a person to stop. But if you're clear, and if you're clear in your intention about stopping, and that's what it takes, any number of reasons or justifications, if the person is bent on getting their point of view across, may or may not work. So it's really about holding it inside yourself from a place of strength. Okay, next question. I find it difficult to communicate with people who usually glare at me. I find my self-esteem downgraded. What can I do to improve this? So people who glare at you, and that reminds me of teenagers or children, teenagers, and sometimes our spouses will glare at us. And when people glare at us, it's because they don't have the words to express. They don't have the communication tools to express what's really going on. So if someone glares at you, if someone glares at me, I'll say, I see you glaring at me. You think that's going to make a difference? And I'll make a joke of it. I'll make light of it. I use humor a lot when it comes to standing up for myself, speaking up on my own behalf. Glaring is a very primitive way of communicating. So if you find your self-esteem downgraded, that says that you're not feeling good about your point of view and holding and taking a stand for yourself. So if you find that you're not able to tell yourself to really hold for yourself, then and everything you're doing is not working, you might consider hiring a professional. Because if you're in a work situation and your self-esteem, you're dealing with somebody who's not treating you in an honorable or respectful way, that's really a situation that could cost you dearly at work. And so that would be really a coaching conversation. Okay, these are great questions. They keep coming. Someone's asking the question, my question is how to be a decisive decision maker. So when you make your decisions from a place of decisiveness, it has to do with how you hold your decision inside of yourself. Do you hold it from a place of steadfastness? Do you hold it from a place of assurance? If you don't hold your decision from a place of assurance, you're not going to be decisive. Often we're indecisive because when we were young, people gave us a hard time about our decisions. So again, this has to do with your level of self-esteem, and it also has to do with your level of self-confidence. If you're not decisive, chances are that you've had your decisions undermined by other people, or you might be undermining your own decisions. And when that's happening, again, that has to do with your relationship with yourself, has to do with your relationship with self-esteem. And if that's been tarnished and you can simply brush it off and move forward, that's one thing. If you find that you're continually being indecisive, you might want to make a decisive decision and hire a coach. That would be a really smart thing to do. Often I find that women in sciences and the engineering treat personal growth and treat emotions like it's an IKEA lamp or a bookshelf that they're putting together, as in, well, I'm just going to take this apart and I'm going to do it myself. Self-esteem, by and large, and self-confidence are not do-it-yourself job, because the people who were the original instigators, the people who raised you, chances are if you're having a really hard time with self-esteem and self-confidence, the chances are that they did such a thorough job with you of wiping out your self-esteem that you're going to need to do more than an IKEA bookshelf fix in order to get it back, and you may need to hire someone. That is not a sign of weakness, ladies. That is a sign of strength, that you are willing to hire someone to help you gain the tools and the skills set that you need. So if you didn't know something about engineering or something about your job, maybe you would take a course, or maybe you would do something to support you in learning about that. Self-esteem has learning and tools and skills, and if you find that you don't have it, it's because you don't have the tools or the skills, and this is something that you learn. It's not something you can read a book about. There have been many, many books written on self-esteem. Why do you think so many people write books on self-esteem? It's because people cannot get that information through books. It's not delivered and received and worked on through books. Books only appeal by and large to your mind. And even as I say, I'm writing a book about self-esteem, the things that I recommend are very much going to be about taking actions and things that you can do around hiring someone to help you. It's really, really key. That, again, that's not a sign of weakness or vulnerability. Men don't think twice about hiring a coach. If they're in sports, well, and they want to be the best basketball player or foosball player or soccer player, they hire a coach. They don't think twice about it. This is a move of strength. So if you want to get really good at something, hire a coach. Question: how does leadership relate to self-esteem? Well, if you have low self-esteem, you could carry on bravado and have a show of confidence and act leader-like. But you know when you go home at night if you don't have self-esteem. If you don't have self-esteem, you're going to doubt yourself. You're going to feel like the decisions that you're making aren't good ones. You're going to feel questions about what you tell the people who work for you, who report to you. You're going to doubt how you handle your leadership. You're going to question how you go about things. You're going to feel like maybe you're not going to feel self-assurance. You're going to feel like, well, maybe what I'm doing isn't the right move. You're going to compare yourself to others. You're going to question your leadership. And if you don't have self-esteem, it will hold back, it will hamper, it will downgrade, it could even paralyze your leadership. People who are not effective with self-esteem, who do not have high self-esteem, are going to interfere with their own leadership. They're going to doubt themselves, and people who don't have high self-esteem will not appoint other leaders because they're going to be jealous. They're going to be competitive. They're not going to want to have other people in the leadership circle. This is particularly true with women, unfortunately. Women can get very, very jealous of other women in particular and try to hold people back who start showing promise. It's a small quality, it's a petty quality, and it comes with low self-esteem. It comes with doubting yourself, it comes with questioning your leadership. And what happens is that when there's low self-esteem, women who lead from and have low self-esteem are not effective leaders because they don't welcome the people who can truly help them look good into their leadership circle. If you are an effective leader, you're not concerned with competition, you're not jealous, you're not questioning other people in that way, and you're moving forward in a way that is strong and confident and trusting and having the faith that you know what you're doing. Okay, final question, last question. How can we improve our leadership skill as relates to self-esteem? So I'm glad you folks are asking about leadership. A lot of the women, many of the women I work with are C-level executives. Some of them lead organizations. They're chief executive officers, they're chief financial officers, they're chief intellectual property officers. They are in situations where they're leading, or they're vice presidents, or they're project directors, or general directors, or managers. So if you want to improve your leadership skill as it relates to self-esteem, it would be extremely, extremely important for you to look at your leadership from the place of confidence and from the place of competence. So to improve your leadership skill, you want to look at how you can be self-assured, how you can trust that the people around you are there to support you rather than to undermine you. If you're continually thinking that the people who are there to undermine you, then you will be constantly watching your back. You will constantly be not trusting that those people are really not there for your highest good, and that they're maybe after your position or wanting to have you not do well, that they're there to see you fail. So that's definitely low self-esteem thinking. So if you want to improve your leadership skill, you want to support yourself in feeling that the people that are around you, that you have assembled people around you who are there to support you, who are there to help you make the organization better, and that they are there for you to succeed. So again, many women engineers treat personal growth work like it's installing a shelf, or like it's doing a test, or like it's doing a project. Having wonderful, healthy, functional self-esteem, getting that, attaining that, and holding that, sustaining that, is not a linear process. I would suggest to you and invite you to consider that this was not part of your engineering training, that it's actually a very different skill set. So with that in mind, I'd like to offer you as my gift to you a 1-hour complimentary strategy coaching consultation to talk with you in greater depth about the questions that perhaps you've had on this call, to talk with you in greater depth about the concerns that perhaps you felt embarrassed or shy about indicating on the call because maybe you didn't want to give away your identity or didn't want to admit that something was really an issue for you. I usually charge $300 for this strategy consultation, and for those listening to this webinar, I am offering this as my special gift to you. This is a limited time offer, so if you would like a consultation, you can post on my Facebook page at Miriam Reiss, R-E-I-S-S. You can email me at Miriam at miriam@wisdomcoaching.com, or you can phone me at 323-319-5353. Again, you can either post on Facebook or email me, miriam@wisdomcoaching.com, or call me at 323-319-5353. Okay, we have a couple of more questions. I'll get to as many of them as I can. Is apologizing a big no-no? Women tend to, when I talk about pleading for or over-justifying, apologizing can be in a woman a weakness. When you apologize, there is a way that I coach my clients to do where apologizing is actually an enormous strength. So apologizing can either be a huge no-no or a huge strength, depending on how you do it. If you apologize from a place of high self-esteem, then it is actually a strength, and you are bringing people to you, you are including them. It's an inclusionary kind of thing. If you're apologizing from the place of, I'm sorry, excuse me, I did something wrong here, my bad. There's an expression in the United States now where people say, my bad. I hate when women say my bad. There is nothing bad about you. It's just a colloquialism women will say, people will say, and it is really a bad language, a bad phrase. So I would say in general that apologizing, whether or not it's a big no-no, has to do with how you apologize. So when I'm coaching people, we actually do role play. We do live role play where we get into the situation and we go back and forth, and I say, tell me, how do you want to apologize to this person? And I actually help them with the words, with the languaging, and we go back and forth so that their body language and their voice and their presence and their way of being reflects high self-esteem. So apologizing is not just the words that you use, it's your punctuation, it's your voice, it's your phrasing, it's your languaging, it's how you hold yourself, it's your gestures, it's your body language, it's your energy, it's what you're thinking inside as you say, it's all those things. You could in fact be apologizing and hold yourself from a place of such high self-esteem that people go, oh, that's fine. And you could get away with murder by apologizing in a certain way. I have heard people apologize in a way that had such high self-esteem that people would just dismiss it and go, oh, that's great, and would ask for more. So depending on how you do it, if people know and see and experience you as having high self-esteem, then in fact, how you do it will actually add to your credibility rather than taking away your credibility. See, another question here. Why do I always feel I am not good enough for my job role? So what you're describing here is classic low self-esteem. When we always feel like we're not good enough, whether it's for a job role or whether it's something else, the always feeling not good enough is the broken record of low self-esteem. I would encourage you, I would highly encourage you to take me up on my offer of a complimentary 1-hour complimentary strategy consultation. Again, this is a limited time offer. I'm offering this to WIE specifically because I know this is such an issue. I really want to make myself available to you. This is my special gift to you. It's a limited time offer. Please contact me either through my Facebook page. You can private message me on Facebook. Let me know, or email me, Miriam@wisdomcoaching.com, or call me 323-319-5353. Please, I really encourage you to reach out if you have a message going inside you, a constant or always not good enough message going inside you. What that says is that you're dealing with chronic low self-esteem. And if you're dealing with chronic low self-esteem, there's a good chance that your job is not as big as it could be, or it could be that you are not making as much money as you would like to be making, or it could be that you feel that you're always somehow trying to measure up, and that is really the way to do it. That in fact that you may be feeling that that if you're not feeling like that you're chronically feeling like you're not good enough, that is really going to impact the level of job that you get. It's going to stop you from asking for promotions. It's going to stop you from asking for the money you deserve. It's going to stop you from having the life that you want. So this is a great way of taking care of yourself. So this is an opportunity for you to really take care of yourself. So we're going to close this call. I thank you for being with me on the call. This is Dr. Miriam Reiss signing off at this time. Thank you for coming to the self-esteem and self-confidence game. And I wish you high self-esteem and high self-confidence in your life at this time. Take care. Bye-bye now.